And hello, good morning. All right, so we're ready for our reading lesson. I'm sorry that we can't do a live Zoom. I like the live Zoom better, but sometimes we have to do this. And really, it helps me too. So anyway, and I have a feeling it probably helps your Nana sometimes. All right, so we're going to read. Remember, I told you last week in the last lesson that we had, we were doing PQ3R, that study method, remember? And I told you that this week we're going to be reading a lot about flags. Now this week you're not going to have any assignments in reading because we're going to finish everything together. So we don't really have any stories. We have mostly articles, poems, that kind of stuff. So this week's going to be really cool in reading. So go ahead and get your reader book out and turn to page 352. You see it right here on your screen, page 352. And then we have these work text pages. You don't have to get those out just yet. We're going to go through and look at some stuff about flags. So the story or the article that we're reading is called Keep the Flags Flying High. So you should be on page 352. If you're not, pause it, and then we'll go ahead and start. All right, let's look at some vocabulary words here. Legend is the first word. Have you heard the legend about George Washington chopping down the cherry tree? Legend. So a legend is something, it's a story that's been passed down, and really nobody knows whether it's true or not when it comes to a legend. Hoist. He will hoist the flag up the pole. Hoist means to do what? To make it go up. Hoist it up. Taper. Objects that taper are wide on one end and gradually become smaller on the other end. See this? I don't know if it's a tool or a weapon, but whatever it is, it's tapered. It's bigger up here and it kind of tapers down to a point. That's what the word taper means. All right, I'm going to give you a riddle. Are you ready? What can wave but can't shake hands? What stands for something but won't sit for anything? And what do countries and states all around the world have in common? Can you guess it? A flag. A flag. I bet you guessed it. All right, look at these pictures of these flags. What do all these flags have in common? Well, they all have symbols and they have colors. They're at the top of a flagpole. They're waving in the breeze. So what's different about the flags? The colors, the shapes, the designs, that kind of thing. How do you think flags came to be used? Do you know? We're going to read pages 352 to 355 in our book to find out how flags have been used throughout history and why they're important. So look at the top of page 353, actually just right in the middle. You follow along with me. Just about everyone has heard the legend about Betsy Ross sewing the first American flag. You may have heard the story of how Francis Scott Key wrote the Star-Spangled Banner. And when astronaut Neil Armstrong became the first man on the moon, people everywhere watched as he planted the American flag there. Flags have played an important role around the world for centuries. Men from many nations have followed their flags into battle and died for what their flags symbolized. Patriots everywhere still hoist flags to show their loyalty to their nation. But how did people start using flags in the first place? Actually, flags were never invented. They just developed out of simpler objects. Most people who have studied flags believe that the very first flags were used in battles. The dust and confusion in battle made it hard for soldiers to recognize their leaders. So some ancient captains in Egypt, Persia, and Greece started tying a piece of colored cloth onto the end of their spears. That way they could guide their men more easily. Years later, the Roman cavalry used a square cloth banner called a vexillum. At first, the vexillum hung straight down from a crossbar on the end of a spear. In time, though, soldiers discovered that they could attach the banner to the side of the spear. In this position, it could wave in the wind was also easier to handle. As flags became more popular, people began trying out new designs. Many flags remained square, but others became rectangles, triangles. Some people even created swallow-tailed flags, flags that taper off in 2 or 3 points or tails. In 1206, the Mongol invader Genghis Khan used a battle flag that had so many tails that it looked like tongues of flame streaming behind a spear. As time passed, though, most flags became rectangular shaped. Later in history, flags became common symbols for cities, even some individuals. And in the Netherlands, each city still flies its own flag. A flag with water lily leaves represents the city of Friesland. Many noblemen created their own personal flags and flew them over their castles. I'm on page 355. Some pirates even flew a Jolly Roger, a black flag with a white skull and crossbones to show that they were pirates. You see that on there? I know you've seen that before, the Jolly Roger flag. Today, most flags show loyalty to countries or states, but there are still many other jobs for flags to perform. For instance, a solid red flag warns of danger. A solid white flag raised in battle means surrender. And an American flag flown upside down becomes a distress signal, a cry for help. That's why we should never fly the flag upside down unless we need help. At sea, ships use flags to identify themselves and to send messages. International code flags are brightly colored flags that stand for letters and numbers. By flying certain groups of these code flags, sailors can pass signals to other ships, but they must be careful to use these flags properly. During World War II, which is what we're studying in history, some British soldiers escaped from the Japanese in a small sailboat. And after many days at sea, they finally spotted an Allied ship. So they excitedly raised what they thought were the signal flags to ask for help. The captain of the ship was astonished when he read the little boat's message, preparing to attack. He shouted at the soldiers that the soldiers better take their signal flags down or be blasted out of the water. The embarrassed soldiers quickly followed his advice. Flags may have simple beginnings, but they certainly have become important parts of our lives. But what of that first ancient captain who invented a flag by tying a strip of cloth to a spear? What would he have said if someone had told him that his idea would someday be used around the world and even on the moon? He probably would have laughed. All right. So let's ask some review questions. Now, I want you to say the answers to these out loud so that your Nana can tell that you are listening, okay? All right. What does flying a state or country flag show? What does that show? The flag is a symbol of that country, and flying it shows loyalty for that country. So if you fly the Texas flag or you fly the American flag, that means that you're showing, look, I love my country and I'm loyal to my country or to my state. What are some of the different uses for flags? What are some different things that we use flags for? Name them out loud. Okay. To represent a city, state, or a country. To warn of danger. To admit surrender. To use as a code. To identify a ship. Those are just some of the reasons that we use flags, the different ways that we use them. Why do you think flags are important today? I think flags are important today because, there's a fly in here, not many people are very loyal anymore. And I think it's very important to show what you stand for. All right, let's look at our work text pages. There is a fly and he's really bothering me. All right, so open your work text to pages 141 and 142. We're going to do these pages together. Okay, so go ahead and pause it while you're looking for those pages. Okay, you should be on the top of page 141. This is about analogies. Now, an analogy is a comparison that shows the relationship between words. Myself, I learn very well using analogies. So let's look at the steps to learn how to complete an analogy. Look at the top, the very top where it says number 1, underneath where it says think about it. Number 1, analogy. Cloth is to spear as flag is to blank. Now, before you answer it, look at number 2. An analogy compares or relates the two statements or facts. The key is to figure out the relationship of the first words, and the second set of words will have that same relationship. So look at number 3. So what is the relationship between the cloth and a spear? Because the analogy is cloth is to spear. So you got to figure out the relationship between those two things. So we know that a long time ago, they would put cloth on the end of a spear to fly that on there, right? Okay, so cloth is to spear. Okay, we know they put cloth on the spear to fly. Okay, as flag is to pole, because today we put a flag on a pole. So now you see cloth and spear, how those are related, and then flag to pole, how those are related. That's what an analogy does, okay? An analogy may be expressed using arrows to represent is, to, and a colon in place of the word as. So let's look, you see where it says number 4, kind of right in the middle of the page. Cloth, you see where it says is to, okay? Well, you can actually put an arrow there rather than the words is to. Spear, and then rather than the word as, you could put a colon. That's a dot dot. Okay, notice how they did that, how they used the is to, rather than that they put the arrow, and then rather than as they used the colon. Okay, so let's do the figure it out part. Number 1, let's use the words in the green box to complete the analogy. Now I do want you to write these, and I want you to pause it after we get each answer so that you can write it in there, because I'm going to go kind of fast, okay? I have a lot of lessons to record today. Number 1, Adam is to Earth as Neil Armstrong is to, did you say moon? If you did, you got it right. So go ahead and pause and write moon in that blank. Number 2, red flag is to danger as white flag is to, did you say surrender? All right, surrender goes in the second blank. Number 3, flag is to rectangle as wheel is to circle. Good. And number 4, soldier is to land as sailor is to sea. I know you got all those right. Okay, now on the last 5 that you see, okay, they're the same thing. They're analogies, but rather than using the words is to and as, they used the arrows and stuff like that. So I want you to pause this, and I want you to finish 1 through 5. And then when you're done, turn it back on, and we'll go over the answers to make sure you got those right. Okay, on number 1, you should have gotten rider. Number 2, referee. Number 3, rough. Number 4, hot. Number 5, sleep. All right, I think you probably got all those right. All right, flip the page over. We've got another page to do today, and it's just a page that we're going to work on together. Now, this is actually going over, this is on page 142. This is going over that study method that we learned the other day called the PQ3R. Remember, preview, question, read, recite, review. Okay? All right. So do you see right in the center on the left-hand side where it says practice studying? Okay, it says use the PQ3R method to study this selection up here at the top. And we're going to follow the steps. So step 1 is preview. Okay, so skim the article to kind of see what it's about. Look at the title, look at the words you see. Basically, this is going to be about the American flag, the United States flag. That's what it's about. We on the same page, so to speak? Okay. Number 2, step 2 says to question. That means to change the title and those other 2 subheadings. Now, one subheading is honoring and another one is using. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to press pause and I want you to change the title into a question and each of those subheadings into a question and write those down. They can be short. For instance, on number 1, if you do the United States flag, you might say, what are some important things about the U.S. flag? Or why is the U.S. flag important? Or something like that. And then you'll write another question for honoring and another question for using. Just ask yourself that, okay? So go ahead and pause it and write those questions down. It's not right or wrong. It's just whatever questions you want to ask. Okay, you should have your questions asked, written down. So now the next part for you to do is I want you to read. Remember, read, recite, repeat, review. Those are the 3 R's. So you're going to have to pause this, and I want you to read that article, okay, and then turn it back on. Okay, so did you read the article? All right, and then it says step 4 to recite. Be ready to share your answers. And then it says write the answer to one of your questions. So did you get an answer to any of your questions? If you did, just jot it down there. It doesn't even have to be a complete sentence. Just jot down your answer, just something that you learned from that article. And then step 5 is to review. That means to go back over it and make sure you got all your answers, which I think we probably did. So that's all you have to do. There's no other assignment. Just right there on step 4, just write something that you learned about that, okay, in that reading. And then that will be all of your reading for the day. There's no other assignment, okay? All right, if you're kind of confused, if you need to go back just a little bit, go back and listen to the video a little bit another time, okay? All right, that'll be all for today.